Hello everyone and welcome to my eyeshadow palette tag. This video was started by Ali Glines and Samantha March here on YouTube. I will link both of their videos down in the description box down below, as well as some of my favorite creators who also did this video. Now this tag started back in 2020 and they had recently just come out with a round 2 of the video. I've personally never done the eyeshadow palette tag before, so in today's video I will be doing a combination of part 1 and part 2. And now let's begin. First up, my newest eyeshadow palette is the Natasha Denona Biba palette. I just recently got this, I think, in the Sephora sale this past fall. November 2021, I believe. And I think this palette is pretty popular ever since it came out. I love neutral eyeshadows, so I've always wanted to try this. However, it's too expensive that I never got around it. This past holiday season, so right around November time, I saw this palette so many times in so many different videos, including wishlists and haul videos from the creators that I follow. I just thought, okay, it's time that I finally give this palette a try. I'm pretty sure I haven't gotten any makeup since then, and at the moment I do plan on trying for a year-long makeup no-buy for the entire year of 2022. I haven't officially set it up yet, but it's definitely been on my mind. And yes, so far I have been successful in the month of January. Next up, the oldest palette. So the oldest palette I currently own is this Coastal Scents 88W. So I think that stands for warm. I thought I had already decluttered all of these large palettes I got a while back. I believe I got this one in 2013. You can see how the packaging is worn off. I do want to say that I called this my Coastal Scents palette because that's what it was meant to be when I bought this. That's what's in the product name when I bought this, but it doesn't have the brand name on it. So the whole time I've had this, I've always been wondering if this is a knockoff or something. But anyways, I'll just call this my Coastal Scents palette because that's what I bought it as. And I am aware that the brand Coastal Scents went out of business in the year of 2021. Of course, I have not used it in years, but I did use this a ton. And I could see that I've actually got a dip going on in a few of the shades. So I don't know if I would ever use this ever again. Perhaps if I ever dye my hair purple again and I'm looking for a purple eyebrow color, I might get this out. But other than that, I think I'm just gonna keep it for the sentimental value, I guess, because it's definitely one of the first eyeshadow palettes I've ever had. Next up, my most expensive palette. So I've actually got two because they're at the same price. So one of which you probably already guessed is the Biba, and then the other one is also a Natasha Denona. It's a Circle Loco palette that just came out this past year. I can't believe we're already in 2022. I live in Canada, so if you're wondering how much these cost in Canada, they are $170 each. That is ridiculously expensive. A lot of the content creators that I watch are US based. So every time when I hear the Natasha Denona palettes being $129, I just think, wow, I wish they were $129 Canadian. Next up, my most affordable palette. So on the same topic, I really feel like nothing in Canada is really affordable. So I really didn't know which one to pick. And I thought I'd mention this one. This is the e.l.f. Matte for Matte palette. The reason why I didn't think of this right away was because this is actually a gift with purchase. So I looked this up and it retails for $13. I've only used this a couple times. So in terms of the shades, they're all colors that I vibe with, but the quality is just not that amazing. So I would always tend to gravitate toward some of my other palettes when it comes to the neutral tones. And I do love matte, so, but once again, it's just not the best quality. Next up, the Everyday palette. I have the NARS Skin Deep eyeshadow palette. This is actually what I used today as well. I think a lot of NARS eyeshadow palettes, or even just NARS products in general, just come and go. So I don't know if this has been discontinued, but I think the colors in here are just so perfect. I love all the shades. It works really, really well with my skin tone and my undertone. I just feel like I could combine any of these colors in any way possible, and no matter what combination I use, it's gonna turn out looking really good. Next up, my most colorful palette. I've got the ColourPop and Kathleen Lights collab, So Jaded. I'm not that into colorful eyeshadows. I just love my neutral tones. I do enjoy some blues and oranges, typically when it comes to colors, but I think this palette is just so beautiful and it's so versatile. And when I got it, I just thought, wow, this would be the perfect travel palette. If I ever go traveling, all I need to bring is this one palette because it's got some neutral tones and it's got a ton of colors in it. But guess when I got this? January of 2020. So I never ended up taking this anywhere. These are really just not my typical everyday shades either. It's pretty much unused by now. I feel like I've only used this maybe a handful of times, but I'm still very hopeful. I think one day when I do ever get to go travel, I will bring this with me. Next up, smallest palette. So I've got two here because one of them is a dual, so I'm not sure if that counts as a palette. The other one I've got is a quad, so I think quad definitely counts as palettes. But even if duos do count as palettes, these two would be my smallest and second smallest. So this quad is even smaller than any other duals I've got in my collection. Both of these are from Muji. I feel like I've used each of these once. Actually, I'm not even sure if I've ever used this mint green one. I do think it's really beautiful. Yeah, you know what? Maybe I've never used this green one. And I have used this orange one only once. I can't really speak for the quality, but why not start using these? After I finish recording this video, I will remember to start using these eyeshadows. Next, my biggest palette, again, is this Coastal Sands. Same as my oldest eyeshadow palette. Next up, palettes with the best memory. I've got two over here because they came in the same order, and these are the Huda Beauty 9-pan palettes. The first sets that ever came out, I think. I've got the Mauve Obsessions and the Warm Brown Obsessions, both of which I still love so much till this day. I got these in, I believe, December of 2017. My dad gifted me these as a Christmas, New Year present, and I was so excited to get these in the mail. I still remember the day I received these. I believe these are my first ever high-end eyeshadow palettes. They definitely mean a lot to me, and I loved wearing these. And I remember that I went traveling with my roommate at the time in the winter break of 2017, and of course I took these with me. I feel like literally the entire month of December and also the following months, of course, in the new year, I wore these two palettes just interchangeably. They are very pigmented and the shades are all really beautiful. I've got a few of Huda Beauty's 9-pan palettes since, almost at least one in each series, I think. But I still feel like these have some of the best qualities and the best shades. So these are my palettes of my best memory. So next up, worth the hype. I'll be bringing this one back again. I think the Biba palette is definitely worth the hype. I do feel like this is many people's favorite, and this is certainly one of my favorites. And of course, I finally decided to buy it because I still saw so many people talking about this palette even after, what, 2 years since it came out? So I think that really shows how popular this palette is and how many people actually end up liking it. So do I. So I think this is totally worth the hype. Now, on the other hand, the next question is not worth the hype. And I really couldn't come up with an answer for this one. Next up, favorite palette from favorite brand. If you have seen my 2021 project pan, you've seen this palette many times. It was in there for the entire year. And if you haven't seen it, I will have it in the cards as well as in the description box down below, so you can feel free to check it out. I do also have a project pan for 2022, which you can also check out in my channel. This is the NARS Mini Orgasm eyeshadow palette, and this is actually pretty tiny as well. Maybe I could compare with the Muji one. So that's comparing it to the quad, and then that's comparing it with the dual. You can see how small these ones are. So I think overall, as a brand, not limited to just the eyeshadow category, my favorite brand would be NARS. I think just all of their products that I've ever tried, I very much enjoyed. So within all the NARS eyeshadow palettes I have, this is the first one that came up to my mind, probably because I used it so much in this past year. But of course, I use it a lot because I really like this palette. I still really love this palette. I even have a brand new backup of it, which I probably shouldn't have got, because I didn't expect this tiny little palette to last me for so many uses, countless uses. It's just so firmly pressed, which is once again a good thing. And the last question for part 1 of the eyeshadow palette tag is my most used eyeshadow palette. This is the Kate BR6. If you have seen my 2021 project pan, then I'm sure you've seen this one in there as well. This is definitely my most used eyeshadow palette. It was what I used every single day for a while, for maybe a year or two. Okay, maybe just a year, not 2 years. Otherwise, I would have finished it already. And I even feel like if I tried starting now, I could finish it completely within this year. That's how little I feel like there's left in here. Of course, I haven't really used it for many years. And when I had it in my project pan, the only shade I used was this one, because that's the one shade that I chose to focus on. So even with it being in my project pan for a few months, I did not even use the other shades. Nevertheless, I'm pretty sure that this is still my most used eyeshadow palette in terms of the number of uses. All right, that's the end to part 1. Let's move on to part 2, the new set of questions. So first up, all-time favorite. So this is another Natasha Denona eyeshadow palette. I got this one at the end of 2020. This is the Glam palette, and I love it so much. Once again, it's the neutral tones, and I just love neutral eyeshadows. I could definitely use every single shade in here. So very similar to the NARS Skin Deep that I mentioned earlier. I could use these shades in almost any combination, and it's just gonna turn out looking really good. So definitely a favorite ever since I got it. Next up, a new favorite. This I got in the summer of 2021. It is the Tom Ford 27 Mink Mirage. It's one of their newer shades. I think after they discontinued Cocoa Mirage, which I never got to buy. But if I were to choose between the old Cocoa Mirage and the newer Mink Mirage, I'd probably stick to the Mink Mirage because I just love these shades a bit more because these are slightly more cool tone, but overall I think very, very neutral actually. Not too warm, not too cool. I really, really love this. It's all matte palette. It's definitely a new favorite. This one also was very close to making it to my all-time favorite, even for it being a quad, only 4 shades. I am pretty confident that if I had this one longer than I had the Glam palette, that this would have been my all-time favorite. Next up, keep for the memories. I've got the ABH Soft Glam palette. I'm going to mention my project pan again, but not the 2021 one, but the 2022 one. I have this palette in there, and as I explained in my project pan video, this is what I wore on my wedding day. Of course, it holds a lot of memories. It's just a very special palette. It was my favorite palette at the time, and that's why I used it on my wedding day. And I just love the look that I created that day. I like the entire makeup, not just the eye makeup, but everything about it. And I feel like I could never ever recreate a look that I love so much, to be honest. My 3-year anniversary is approaching, actually, especially by the time I have this up. I don't know, maybe it's only gonna take me a day or 2 to edit because I really want to get this video up because I enjoy watching the eyeshadow palette take so much. I really want to participate this time around since I missed out on the first round back in 2020. I don't know if anyone cares, but just in case if you are wondering why this is not in the best memories, that's because I did not actually have the best memories on my wedding day. It's nothing but the wedding itself, but I'm not gonna get into it. But it's just, you know, not my best day. So nevertheless, this holds a lot of memories and it feels very special to me. And that's why I have it in my project pan. Next up, underrated. I picked the Natasha Denona's Circo Loco palette, which I think came out in 2021, and I got it in the summer of 2021. How come the plastic film is still in there? I used this palette so many times. So these are the colors that I was talking about that I would wear. And I was so drawn into these colors. This was the first ever big size Natasha Denona palette that I've ever got. And as such a big neutral fan, I got this all colorful palette. To me, I can actually wear every single one of these colors. And I enjoy wearing all these colors. These are the oranges, the blues, and this mint green. I use this so many times. Of course, everything still looks unused. What I have with all my eyeshadow palettes, they just look so new. I don't know, I'm incredibly light-handed, I guess. The purples, pinks, golds, it's just a perfect palette. In my opinion, this is definitely an underrated palette. Next up, not a favorite but can't get rid of, I've got the Urban Decay Born to Run palette. So I want to say this is the first high-end eyeshadow palette that I've ever got with my own money. And when it first came out, I liked it so much. I just think it's so beautiful. I know it's not that similar, but if you look at this, don't you see some similarities to the Circo Loco palette? So I just feel like this kind of color story really draw me in. So I was so drawn into this eyeshadow palette. I really, really wanted it. I just wish I could get it. And luckily, during that time when I was eyeing this palette, I think I got a job and I was really happy about it. So I went ahead and got it. Although I don't use this palette very much, this really wouldn't be something that I would ever want to get rid of. Well, maybe not ever, once it gets, you know, very, very old, like over 10 years old, and I may consider decluttering it or something, just because I really don't get to use it that much, especially nowadays. But it's still something that I want to keep. And also, since it's the Born to Run palette, maybe I can bring this on with me when I ever travel again. Next up, favorite collab. Here I have the Shu Uemura and Maison Kitsune collab. Let me know if you've ever even heard of this collab. So I just love the shades in here. As you can see, at first glance, it definitely looks like a neutral palette. I know this is so boring. This video, I feel like it's just full of neutral palettes. Everything's a neutral palette. Except for only a few. So I'm sorry if you're not into neutral tones, but I am very much, as you can see by now. And it's got like a muted green and olive and a pop of orange. It looks red. It's kind of in between red and orange, I would say, but it's very pretty, very spring summer like. So overall, it just really gives me good vibes. I was very drawn into this color story when I first saw it, but I believe it just sold out instantly on the Canadian site. So yeah, it's a journey for me to get it, but in the end I finally got it and I'm so happy that I got it. This is such a wonderful palette. And this is the only Shu Uemura eyeshadow that I have. And I think it's very nice quality. I don't know about their other eyeshadow palettes. I'm very happy with this palette. I'll just leave it at that since it's already discontinued a long time ago. Next up, 2021 favorite. It's the Circle Local palette again. Well, it's the third time this palette has come up in the video. So I think needless to say anything more about it. I've said everything I want. Next up, palette that sparks joy. Here I've got the Chanel Quad in 328 Blurry Mauve. I got this as a birthday gift back in 2020 from my best friend, and I loved it ever since. I still have this in my top drawer ever since I got it, and I still use it consistently. Once again, it's a pretty neutral color story with a pop of burgundy. I think this creates a really nice smoky eye. It also works as everyday shade. I could just take one of these more brown tone shades and then use as a one and done shadow. And it's beautiful. Of course, every time I look at it or get to use it, I think of my friend. It does mean a lot to me, and the fact that she picked such a perfect eyeshadow palette, in my opinion. I love all the shades. This is exactly what I would wear. So it just reminds me of our friendship, and so grateful for that. So this is the eyeshadow palette that sparks joy. And then the next question is the newest eyeshadow palette. I already answered this. It's the Biba. And the final question is the first palette I used in 2022. I want to go ahead and say that I have absolutely no idea which one I used, but if I were to take a fair guess, I would say this was Soft Glam, just because it's in my project pan, and since sometime in December, maybe mid to late December, when I started planning for my 2022 project pan, I already thought of this. So I had already started using this consistently, just trying to incorporate this into every single look I create. Every single time I wear makeup, I try to use at least one shade from here, even if I grab for other eyeshadow palettes. So I think that this could be the very first eyeshadow palette I used in 2022. That wraps up the eyeshadow palette tag part 1 and part 2 combined. I was actually so many palettes I went through, and I feel like this video is getting really long. I hope once I edit it, it's not too long. If you have stayed until this point, I am so happy to have you here. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. That really means a lot to me. And if you'd like to see more videos from me, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I hope to see you in my next video. Bye bye.